the Love in Lebanon podcast, episode number 100. It's here. For such a momentous occasion, Mayor Matt Gentry joins us to cover a wide range of topics, including Lilly, LEAP, and Lebanon's growth. The mayor also talks family, now being a father of two. Episode 100 starts now.
Welcome to the Love in Lebanon podcast, highlighting all the great things happening in Lebanon, Indiana. Have an idea for an episode? Send an email to loveinlebanon@lebanon.in.gov.
Full disclosure, everyone, you may be able to check out and see that this is episode 100 and episode 101 with Stacy has already aired. We're here with Mayor Gentry. A little technical issue.
Come
when
on,
we
Joe,
recorded episode
right?
100 mid-recording. You were giving some insightful info for us, and all of a sudden the computer decided to just stop, and then we had to go to IT, and it became a whole thing. And so we didn't want to delay Stacy any further, but we welcome Mayor Gentry in for episode number 100 of our Love in Lebanon podcast.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate the chance to be here. And of course, want to wish you congratulations as well. 100 podcasts. It's quite the achievement, actually more with all the COVID ones too. So it's a lot of work on your end. I appreciate the effort you've been put into this. So,
well, not to get too gushy, but this is something that you empowered. It was, how do we better communicate with our public? And so reinforce the videos and social media, obviously, but coming to you with a Love in Lebanon podcast was something you jumped on board with, and thankful for that. And we continue after a little revamping.
Well, I have to admit, I am a podcast guy, so I do enjoy a good podcast. But also, I think it's sometimes, especially in politics these days, it's so much about sound bites, right? And so getting a chance to have more of a long form conversation, really kind of try to dive into issues, I just think is really valuable. So I've always appreciated the chances you've had me here. And again, I think you've done a great job highlighting all the great things happening in Lebanon, and great events and great new business, all those things as well.
And when we hit Hallmark numbers, you can bet that we'll have Mr. Mayor with us to be able to update us. And a lot of those news, boy, Lebanon has been in the headlines this week. Was the state of the community, and you were a guest at the 4-H Fairgrounds and able to chat about that. It didn't take long, and it was actually a topic that you jumped into, the whole LEAP discussion. It seems like just about every day there is an information or a meeting that you're into as this whole plan kind of comes to fruition.
Yeah, for the State of the Community event, that's always, I would say it's one of my favorite events. It's great to get up there with all the other communities, representatives, people from, Zionsville, Thorntown, Advance, Jamestown, the county, Lebanon, Zionsville, Whitestown, Community Foundation, all those different groups up there talking about kind of the shared interests of the county, talking about what's going on in Boone County. I think sometimes, obviously in my role, I'm very focused on what's happening here in Lebanon. But it's also reassuring also to hear when we get up there and talk that a lot of these communities are working on the same efforts, right? Or different ways, right? What Advance and Jamestown is doing is different than what Zionsville and Whitestown is doing. But we're all working on trying to build quality of place. We want to make all of our communities great places for people to live, work, raise a family, and then that kind of then reverberates throughout the whole county from that perspective. So yeah, I think it's like I said, it's always a great event. And of course the LEAP district was certainly a topic of conversation. I actually honestly expected to be a larger topic of conversation. I wanted to kind of bring that into the conversation, and talk about what we're doing, what the process looks like. But then also talk about what the potentials are of this, what this, this is a, state-led project, of course, but what the local impacts of this will be just, unforeseen. There's dramatic and lots of goods out of it. Obviously some changes, and people could see those as negatives. But I think on the whole, when the community looks at this is going to be just a transformational project for us that has the potential to benefit every single person that lives in the city of Lebanon.
And do you think the initial shock factor of Lilly coming to town and the whole kind of LEAP concept has kind of subsided a little bit, or just the people in the room understand kind of what's going on and are kind of maybe further away from that?
Well, we're actually coming up almost a year now on when I was actually told by the governor and the IDC what their plans are. That happened on March 1st. So it was kind of about this time this last year that they were trying to hey, we want to get a meeting with you with Secretary of Commerce. Right? So I'm like, okay, well, something's going on, but didn't know the details. So yeah, in one level, it's been a year, right? We've been talking about this for a year, but also on the same level too of the scope and scale of this is really unprecedented in the state of Indiana's history, right? So when we're looking at kind of peer developments of what this looks like, it's looking like the Research Triangle Park, North Carolina. It's looking at some other areas around the country that this has never really been done on this level in Indiana. So it's for sure a learning experience for the IDC as well too. And I think we've come a long way when it comes to communications and working together on this project. Remember last Thanksgiving, not this one, but the one before, there were rumors floating around, FedEx Airport.
We were all checking our LinkedIn profiles and who's stalking us.
I tried to start a rumor that the, Motor Speedway was going to move up here. All those things, right, that we had no idea what was going on because we literally did not. But,
you didn't know you can get any.
I had absolutely no idea. So I think we've put steps in place now that, we're far more engaged in the process. And I think the IDC recognizes that maybe if they're doing it today, they would do things differently. And I think they've actually seen some of that happen at the State House with some of the legislation where they talk about, if the IDC wants to do one of these projects, they have to notify local officials before they acquire any property or get contracts, which I think makes sense, right? Because, I understand their need if they don't want to, distort the market and things like that. But, us local officials, like when we're hearing rumors about these things and we have no idea and the public, and we tell them we have no idea, they think we're hiding something.
Yeah, they're a bit dubious.
Exactly, right? And so they're not necessarily fully trusting of that, which understandable, right? But we've always tried to be transparent and honest here. And with this project has moved through, we've posted information like the day we get it. We've been trying to be as honest and or open and transparent. That we absolutely can be, right? And that's something we really try to really stress that. But I think we just got off on such a wrong foot that we're trying to have to build that trust back with the community, and that's understandable, right? And I think that's something that the IDC's learned with us, that we want this information and we need to have it, and as soon as you give it to us, we're going to share it.
As we get the general scope of just kind of how the LEAP project is going to lay itself out, this Lilly project may just be the first of a smaller domino that's going to fall.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Lilly, of course, is a $2.1 billion investment, second largest economic development project in the state of Indiana's history. Like that's the scope of this. And when this LEAP project is all built out, it may be actually one of the smaller users in this, which is kind of hard to wrap your head around.
Incredible.
Some of the leads we get on this thing are in the tens of billions of dollars. And that's where, I talk about this benefiting all the residents of the city of Lebanon. The tax revenue created by these investments, when they're that large, there may be upwards of, when the city gets our share of this, it may be upwards of $30 million a year annually. Now, our entire city budget is about $25 million a year, right? So we just can't physically spend $30 million a year as a city. And so we actually may put, because that'd be on top of our current property taxes and income taxes and all those other things we collect from a city standpoint. So we may actually just be able to do a property tax refund to people, or literally just write $1,000 check to the county treasurer for every single family home in Lebanon. So this could have, like I said, dramatic direct benefits, even if you don't have a job there, or your kids get a job there, your grandkids get a job there. This could have a dramatic direct impact on just your property taxes you pay. But then also, we, even if that's a third of it, right, we have that other amount of money coming from this to spend on our parks, spend on our sidewalks, spend on our roads, on our street lights. Those have been super well received recently. All those projects that make Lebanon just a great place to live, a safe place to live. It allows us to continue making those investments without impacting property taxes, and if anything, decreasing people's property taxes. So it's kind of a great potential for us. We just have to be able to see the long-term vision and understand, there are changes, right? People that are used to looking out at cornfields, that may change, right? But how do we balance that with things that they're going to be making there that people are going to need too, right? Because in the same breath, yes, we want to make sure we have enough food for America, right? But also, we all have cell phones, right? A lot of people use medicines that are made by people like Eli Lilly, right? A lot of people are buying these electric vehicles, right? So these are all still products. Yes, we all need food, of course, but also we also need these other products too that people want and people need, and they're part of our society now too, right? So it's a decision that property owners are going to have to make, and that's kind of the process that we go through. This is how we manage all that.
If we rewind a couple of years ago, when those things that were made overseas, when the world did shut down for a good while, felt like a very long time. it was crippling.
Yeah.
And there were cars and there were famous pictures in Nashville of the trucks that were sitting waiting on a microchip and that type of stuff.
And I would say that's a big part of why I think there's been such a great market response to Leap, because the COVID pandemic did highlight, the weaknesses in our supply chain. If your entire, truck you roll off your assembly line from Ford, it can't go because of a 10-cent microchip. That defeats the whole purpose, right? And so, because it's stuck on a container ship, it can't get here from Malaysia or China or wherever, or Hong Kong. So that's kind of one of those things. It highlighted those insecurities. So this is about, reshoring jobs, obviously trying to making these critical components here, but also there's a national security component as well too, right? I mean, these are chips that are used in government applications for our military, and our airplanes. I mean, all these different applications of these microchips, and they could potentially be in the hands of a foreign power, right? So there's also a national security argument to this too, of like, why does it make sense to start making these things back in America? And we just have to be in a situation where we are kind of becoming that location to make those here in Indiana. So.
Mm-hmm. And if you can kind of take us behind the scenes a bit, there are these real conversations that you're in the midst of now that this ball's rolling.
There are several leads. There are things, that, I don't know the company names yet. The way it works in economic development is you have code names. Yeah, exactly. But, we kind of know the ballpark, levels of investment, and these are in the tens of billions of dollars, right? So Lilly, being number 2 ever in Indiana, is $2.1 billion. Talking about tens of billions, these are going to be 10x of what Lilly is, right? So that's really exciting for us, and again, just unlimited opportunities, potential jobs that you can support families on. I mean, actually, President Biden spoke about this in the State of the Union, talking about the semiconductor chip plant in Columbus. I mean, these are 6-figure jobs, right? And they don't all necessarily require a college degree, right? So these are jobs that people in Lebanon will be able to fill. We're also working with the state to how do we bring post-secondary education, training opportunities to scale up people that are interested in filling these careers as well too. But I think it's going to be just a great long-term benefit for our community, just of what it could do for everyone in town.
Yeah, and you talked about the potential refund checks that could come. This is looking
down the road.
Yep. But something you said in passing, and if you don't mind me sharing, everyone has kind of been touting the beautiful streetlights, and you mentioned that earlier in this podcast. But it's one of those things where to be able to have those streetlights on every street in Lebanon, and not just a select few or highlighting a great trail, but being able to add them everywhere with the help of a project like this.
And sidewalks and curbs and all those things that people like, well, why does that street have these and we don't? The honest answer is we don't have that much money, right? I mean, we're talking about the Fordyce Road project, which has been on, a problem for us from a water drainage standpoint before I was, lived here, before I was probably even born. And it's a $6 million project, right? Just a little stretch of it, right? So we have more than 100 miles of roads in Lebanon, right? So trying to build all those roads back to that standard, it takes money, it takes capital, right? And I mean, we could do it, but what it would do to our property tax rate and what people would pay in taxes would be astronomical. So how do we kind of balance these things, right? And that's kind of where this is such a unique opportunity, because when the payment comes to us from the state, we are totally flexible and we can use that for, right? So again, those refund checks I talked about for property taxes, but then also parks, could be rebuilding a road, adding street lights to where we need them, adding more trails, paths, park amenities, anything we can imagine as a city, we can do it with those funds, which is great.
And I forget how you phrased it exactly, but it was, we have too much work or potential work or money to be able to pay for the projects that could happen within the city, where there's almost not enough labor to be able to do all the work that the city can pay for to be able to better itself as a result of what could be coming into the city.
Yeah, ballpark, if we're talking about where we're getting a $30 million check from the state, I mean, that's more than our entire city budget, right? I mean, I think our total road budget between all of our sources is probably around $1 million or so, right? So we talking about we're getting 30 in, we put 10 back to go back to the residents to pay the property taxes. I mean, we're talking about potentially $20 million a year for road projects, right? That we could rebuild a lot of things with that, right? So community centers, police stations, fire stations, whatever we need to make sure that we can provide the best possible service to our residents at the lowest possible cost. I mean, it's just, again, I look at it from my perspective. I think it's a no-brainer. I think it's, again, the opportunities, all the pros just dramatically outweigh the cons. And that's just the way I look at it. And that's my vision for it.
And we kind of joked around like the Oprah, you get a sidewalk and you get a sidewalk and you get a.
I mean,
but
yeah.
theoretically.
But when we have these types of users that are generating this amount of assessed value and amount of property taxes collected and paid to us, that becomes feasible and that becomes possible. And, we're obviously still a very small, compact city, and we can be very efficient with that. And we can really make some just transformational improvements to a lot of parts of town, parts that we're making investments in now, but we just can just kick it up to totally another level to just really make, a really uniform and improved look for and function for everyone as well.
And everyone, we're talking with Lebanon Mayor Matt Gentry here on episode 100 of our Love in Lebanon podcast. Can we talk about just the overall growth? We've touched on Lilly and gone deep in that, and I appreciate your perspective. But, you look out just across I-65 and there's Hickory Junction. You kind of look and not too much happening with the Waterford development, but all those things are gonna come online as 2023 really starts to go and the construction season goes in full swing. We're going to see a lot of different things popping up and happening within the community.
Yeah, it's going to be dramatic. I know we've seen a huge amount of change in the last 5 years already, right? Just the number of new homes coming up. But when we start to see these new, essentially just anchors for these developments coming along, the interest around the area of Hickory Junction Fieldhouse is just off the charts. Seeing that going vertical is just it's exciting.
It's unbelievable how quickly it's going.
And we've had a mild winter, right? So we've been able to kind of get ahead of this thing a little bit, which has been great. But seeing that, that vision, right, of the idea, I think we talked about 7 years ago, probably at this point, of trying to bring some type of youth sports or some type of amenity to that area to really just draw people in.
Not a truck stop.
Not a truck stop, not a ATV dealership or whatever. We were pitched a couple times, but something to bring people in to show Lebanon's a great community, and we want to kind of have a chance to show it off and bring people in and welcome them, but also that also brings new amenities for our residents, right? By bringing in that kind of that tourism component, we get amenities that if a retailer was looking at us because on the paper, hey, you're not quite big enough, but then when they look at it and see, okay, well, we've got a field house that has 60,000 kids and families coming every month, that justifies a different level of service, which then provides those shopping, retail, hotel, all those restaurant options for people that live here in town now.
And it helps out with the city's lack of kind of rooftop in that equation when
Exactly,
the restaurants and the retail and all those things. It really helps out with that part of the equation. Heard it mentioned and seen it on Facebook a couple different times. Lebanon's growing too fast. There's too much growth. I know that there's not the brakes so much that the city can put on it, but your thoughts on that overall comment? Is it happening too fast? And should the city pull the emergency brake in some way, shape, or fashion? Or is the train already going down from the ripple effect from Indy?
Well, it's at some level, right? A lot of this is market driven, right? I mean, the market is responding to demand. There is extremely high demand to live in Lebanon. People are kind of, hey, we're part of the discussion now with all the stuff with Lilly and with the Hickory Junction Fieldhouse and Waterford and what's happening there. We're on people's radar now, right? And I think they kind of realize, oh, they're 25 minutes from downtown and on a major interstate and easy access to Indy and Lafayette both, and all the reason that LEAP made sense here. People are realizing that themselves too. So I would say we're not doing anything. We're not speeding things up. We're not like trying to push things through. It's just happening organically, right? And I would say we've done a lot of my first 3-4 years here. We were doing a lot of planning efforts, right? So we were really trying to think about what's our master plan, right? What does our comprehensive plan look like? How do we, what's our thoroughfare plan, or what do our roads need? How do we manage this change, right? Because I think we could all see it coming. I think some of us have been thinking it was going to come a lot longer before, just had never gotten here. But really, just the way development's happening, it's being done in a managed way, right? And we're working through. We're not just trying to provide housing of one option, right? We're trying to have different types of housing options, different price points, people of all walks of life. That's the type of community we want to build here. We want to keep here. So I don't think we're going too fast. I mean, it's not like we're number one fastest growing community. We are managing it is it dramatically faster than what it was before? Yes. I mean, the 2015 when I came in, we had 2 new housing permits. Last year we were above 160, I believe, right? So we've dramatic increase, right? But some communities have upwards of 500 to 800 new homes in a year, right? So I don't think we're out of control at all. It's a managed process that's been planned for, that is just being implemented now. So there still are challenges from a utility standpoint, right? We're talking about we need water for LEAP as well, and the city needs water itself. So those are all things that we're working through. But those problems kind of get solved with development, right? So that's kind of one of those things too. We've been very proactive too, from having a park impact fee implemented, as well as a road impact fee. So only new development pays these. But essentially, it's a way to offset and capture, hey, there's going to be more people using our parks. So therefore, we can use these park impact fees to make improvements to our parks, add new parks, add whatever we need to do, or road impact fees, right? Obviously, if there's more houses, there's more cars, so we're gonna have to maybe upgrade intersections, improve roads, do all those things with those impact fees. So we were very proactive from that standpoint. We have those kind of in place before things go crazy, right? So we're actually able to kind of manage this. So I don't think it's out of control. I think it's a managed growth. It's growing in a sustainable way, and not just in a kind of, haphazard, grow as fast as you can, because that's not the goal. But it's also, there's just huge market demand to say, we want to be in Lebanon, we want to be building these things.
And something I think it's important, and everyone, we're listening to episode 100, and we've got Mayor Gentry here. Appreciate him taking some time to chat with us. We talk about a lot of the new things, the Hickory Junctions, the Eli Lillys, the Waterfords. There are a couple of different avenues I think our public should be aware of that are helping to augment life and increase the quality of life for current residents. I'm talking about American Rescue Plan money and also the READY grant. If you can kind of touch on some of those things, and these are specifically targeted for just overall quality of life amenities and improving, augmenting different things that are currently existing for people who have called Lebanon home for a good while.
Yeah, so I'll start with the READY grant. So this is actually an initiative by the state of Indiana as well, and it's a goal is to improve quality of life, quality of place. And so there's been kind of a big planning process the county and the city was involved in to kind of highlight potential READY projects and things like that. And we really selected Stone Eater Bike Park as kind of what we think is a compelling project for us. Again, if you're not familiar, it's actually the old dump site. It used to be the old where we take our city trash and throw it out there. And it was actually closed back in the 80s. So it's been a kind of a closed landfill for a long time. But it's about 100 acres, right? And so we have this land that was doing nothing with it. And so we kind of actually connects to our city engineer, Kevin Krulik, kind of this concept behind doing a kind of a mountain bike regional attraction kind of concept kind of just developed. So we're kind of working through those process. We're waiting on kind of the final kind of, okay, you're ready to move forward, kind of sign off from the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, essentially the state's version of the EPA. Waiting off for that final kind of sign off letter, and then we can kind of start moving dirt in there and start chugging. Actually, we've started dirt already, but that'll be kind of the final, like you can start building your park essentially. So we're going to start kind of doing that, but we're able to kind of match so New Cold and the business park is expanding, and they've got all this extra fill dirt that they need to get rid of, and so we're like, well, come bring it to us, right? It's good, farm. You still farm soil, right? So come bring it to us. We'll put it on top of the landfill, which solves the environmental problem.
Cap that thing.
How to cap it exactly. How to make sure it's sealed and water doesn't get to it. It drains properly and does all those things. But then it's kind of a win-win, right? So we're able to kind of match that. They actually get to count that dirt donation as a donation to the project, which is kind of counts as the match, because the way the READY structured, you have to have private monies, public monies, and then the state kind of match money. So we're able to kind of do both those things together to kind of make it all happen. And we're also funding it with the American Rescue Plan. You mentioned that. This was about $3.6 million the city of Lebanon received. That was part of kind of the COVID response from the federal government. It's called the American Rescue Plan. They just essentially was giving money to municipalities to try to help them come back stronger, essentially was the vision, goal for it. Now, granted, philosophically, I have concerns of the federal government putting all this money and all those things, right? But at the end of the day, right, it's money that was given to our citizens, and it came to us, and that's our share. And how do we then manage that to make it the most impact for us? So we're putting about half of it towards utility improvements. So if you've been around kind of the Maple Drive or in the Reese Park area, you've been seeing some utility work in that area. They're actually adding a lift station there, and that will actually solve 7 of our 10 sewer overflows that we get. If there's a heavy rain situation, it'll solve those problems for us. So they call the CSOs, combined sewer overflows. So that's great. So from a health perspective, that's great. We're having issues kind of in the Victoria Court area. So that's getting resolved, which is great. But then that other kind of $1.8 million or so, we're using for various park projects. So we're talking about adding some restrooms at the Sam Rolston Trailhead on the Big Four Trail. We're talking about, we did the lighting in the park that helped with that. The ADA accessible playground, the all-inclusive playground Memorial Park. We're looking at doing a fishing pier in the conservation pond down at Admiral Only Park, as well as that's kind of helped clear out those trees and actually work on a walking trail around Admiral Only Park. So a lot of projects like that. Also bringing back the disc golf course that kind of got shuttered for a while. We're trying to revamp that, bring that back in a better form. So really trying to hit these projects that have been kind of on the to-do list, but we're able to really move quickly on those to kind of just apply those, to make sure those get done, because those have to be done before the end of 2024. So those are on a quick timeline, so we'll start to see kind of the benefits of that kind of happening very soon.
How exciting is it for you to be able to see kind of the transformation, looking back 6-7 years from when office day one and you took the door off the hinges, to look at the community now and the changes and the improvements that are being made? Large, Lilly, smaller, disc golf, but everywhere, everything in between. Infrastructure and also quality of life enhancements. It's been pretty incredible, pretty remarkable.
It's been energizing. Honestly, when I came in, obviously had kind of a vision for where I wanted Lebanon to be, where I wanted to go. I didn't see us doing kind of things I felt like we need to be doing to prepare for this decade. And it's been exciting because I really seen kind of the vision, and based on the conversations I had with people on the doors, talking with them, what they wanted to see is starting to happen, right? We've got more restaurants in, we've got more housing in, we've got, great paying jobs in. We've kind of gone away from logistics type of companies and more towards these manufacturing that pay higher wages. Obviously now with the life sciences with Lilly, with the potentially the advanced manufacturing with the microchips, all of those things that I kind of have talked about, it's kind of all finally becoming a reality, which is really exciting for me and just energizing, because I also think we've made investments in our neighborhoods that, they've been ignored for a long time. We're not just paving the same roads over and over again because the city councilman lives there. We've paved the worst roads first, right? So we take that strategic approach to how do we make sure we're touching all these points in the community. And so I think we've made tremendous strides. We're kind of in the middle of a lot of them still. And I want to kind of see those finished, which is why I'm planning to run for another term. But I think we're able to kind of really just keep pushing forward and just really just kind of grasp that potential and just make sure that vision that, we all kind of hoped and dreamed about, 8 years ago, becomes reality.
And you talked about being energized, and I'll wrap you up with this, Mr. Mayor. Energized for the projects, and you're doing it on less sleep. Since we talked last, that there's been another addition to the Gentry family.
Yeah.
How has that all been with... You mentioned having a man-to-man defense, so you and your wife with 2 kiddos, it's one to one.
Yep.
How's that changing with the energy level that you've been able to have?
So Cooper joined us October 24th. Abby and Cooper and Mason, of course, are doing great. Mason's loving being a big brother. It's been the first one. You always say you're scared, right? You're always terrified, which I for sure I was. The second one, I get it, right? We know what we're doing, right? I'm not afraid of it, right? But it's definitely to change, right? Of course, everybody tells you, right, it's a change, and you don't really believe them or really understand it till you live it. But going from a double team situation, right, where you kind of like, okay, we've got a backup on this, till where, it's man-to-man defense. I just don't know how families do with more than 2. God bless them.
You aren't doing zone, right? No zone for you guys.
We have not made an official determination on that yet. I have a strong opinion, but at the end of the day, it's not just my call on that one. So it's been great. It's been so much fun with Cooper, and but it's also, you're right. It's energizing because that's when I ran in 2015, right? It was about my kids, right? I mean, I obviously was not married at that time. I didn't have any kids, so it was very theoretical, right? But now I'm seeing these things that we're accomplishing. It's like, one day, Mason or Cooper could go work at Eli Lilly, right? Or they could go play basketball at Hickory Junction Fieldhouse, right? Or play golf on the Waterford course. All of these things that we're working on today are going to just be a reality, just part of the Lebanon that my kids grow up in, right? It's not going to be, I remember that used to be a cornfield. They're just going to remember, it's always Hickory Junction Fieldhouse. That's how it's always been. So it's kind of exciting to see them. We're building a community that is hopefully building on its roots, its foundation, but really starting to kind of reach for the stars on what we can accomplish here.
Mr. Mayor, thank you so much for taking some time and helping us commemate episode 100.
Absolutely, Joe, and congratulations again. And anytime you need me, let me know. I'm just a door away from you.
Yeah,
so.
or if you go the opposite way, if you go the main entrance, it's not a door.
Well,
it's
that's
a doorway
true, yeah.
away. Yeah, but here. Folks, thanks for listening to this episode, and we appreciate you sending in ideas for other podcast episodes as well. More episodes are coming your way. We'll chat again soon.